Hello. So God just gave me a download. This is actually a word that I've already kind of put out already in the past. But He's given me like more confirmation on it and more clarity as we are today. And I'm already starting to see this in action. But I mean, this was being prophesied like 6 months ago, right? But it takes time. So God is saying that He's slowly but surely making the world a better place. It takes time to undo the damage that we've caused. Now, as we know, God's in charge. He created everything. He governs what goes on the planet, right? And what the Lord decides is what goes. Once upon a time, 20, 30 years ago, I've made words about this in the past, the Lord allowed us to get so far off track from where we were before. And that was on purpose and intentional, because the only way to realize how far gone you've gotten is to get far gone. Because once you go down, the only next direction to go is up, right? So what I mean is, as we know, in like the 90s, later 90s, early 2000s, that's when internet and computers really took off, right? Now that we've been living under a digital world and we see how there's like AI creation and all these, like how technology is taking over, it's taking over our youth minds, it's taking over marriages, it's taking over families. There's more divorces now, there's more addictions now, more people committing crimes now on drugs, mental illness, things like this. This is not solely a byproduct of internet and technology, but as myself, who's in my 40s, right? I was born in the 80s. I am a personal witness to what life was like 20 years of my life before internet and 20 years of my life post-internet. And 20 years of my life, and I'm mostly talking about post Y2K, year 2000, right? I personally have seen the contrast. It'd be different if I was 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, because this would be all I've known. And maybe if I was older, if I was 60, 70, 80, I wouldn't even maybe notice as to the degree that I do, right? Because I would be too far removed. But because of my age and the fact that I literally spent like 20 years prior to technology and 20 years post-technology, give or take, I know the difference between the type of childhood I had growing up and the type of childhood that my children have growing up and other children have growing up. I know the difference between the society that we once had and the society that we have now, right? And the Lord has highlighted to me that that's due to many factors, but one of the top 3 biggest factors of all is the creation of technology and computers and smartphones and the internet, okay? We're seeing it more and more. All that's happened is this has been a problem from the beginning, but we're seeing the repercussions. It's no different than drinking and driving or smoking. These things were considered more acceptable. They were more accepted 30, 40 years ago, right? But now that we've seen the damage of what smoking does, how it affects your health and how that trait gets passed on to other generations, and we see how much damage they do physically and how much they cost, and the the taxing that they put on our finances, the shortened lifespan. Then our other generations are picking up the habit too. Then with drinking and driving, we saw how many innocent lives have been taken. Again, like I reiterate my word I put out the other day, when you know better, you do better. So because it took time, drinking and driving and smoking was bad from day one, right? But it took years to be able to see for ourselves the data and research it and see just how many thousands of people these 2 things, smoking and drinking and driving, how much these 2 things kill innocent lives every single day, right? And because of that, we knew better, so we did better. So we put out the warnings and we cracked down on drinking and driving to where now it's huge fines, and there's no wiggle room anymore. Before it used to be a slap on the wrist, but not any longer, right? They've cracked down on the penalties for that. And as a result, we're seeing less people smoking, less people drinking and driving. It's become not the norm anymore, right? And so the Lord is saying that while those things, certain things we've use the time of data and research and information to our advantage in some areas, there's certain things that are still going wrong and that are not right in the world. And I'm just going to say, like, I'm not trying to throw shade, but it's what the Lord's told me to say. As we know, the Bible is against LGBTQ. It's like, that's just the way it is. If you were LGBTQ 20, 30, 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, you were in the minority. And it's not that you deserve necessarily to be judged or condemned, but you were looked at as the odd one out, right? Now today, the Lord is saying is that we've been force-fed to swallow for several years now. This didn't just start last year. This has been going on for many years. This acceptance of LGBTQ, right? And so the Lord is saying that he was against it in biblical days. He was against it in 1910. He was against it in 2010. He's against it today, and he'll be against it 50, 100 years from now. It's never going to be accepted in the Lord's eyes, period. And it doesn't matter how much people try to turn the tables around and try to judge those and say, oh, don't try to shade me and shame me and all this stuff. The facts are is that not only is it not normal, it's not like it's frowned upon by the Lord, right? But yet we understood this as a society 50 to 100 years ago. But post Y2K, we've started to accept this, right? And so the Lord is saying is that these are some of the things he highlighted to me. He wants to turn around the LGBTQ movement and make it the minority like it's supposed to be, like it's intended to be. He doesn't want the masses accepting this and celebrating this and making this okay and things like that, because it's not. Another thing that he said, and this is this isn't new. I've put out words on this in the past, but I literally see it now. The words he's given me in the past, it was in a way that it was starting, and now we're in the swing of things, right? So this is like an updated version on the past words I put out in regards to this in the past. So the Lord is saying he's turning things around. So I've already said this, we're gonna go back to like the 90s. We're gonna go back to like the 70s, 80s, 90s type of mindset, prior to what it was before the internet. The internet will still be around and stuff, but the Lord is, it's like the Lord was steering the horse and he allowed the horse to go off track intentionally, right? Just to show us how far off track the horse really went. The Lord told me months ago to put out this same type of context of word, that he was going to be grabbing the horse back by the reins. Now he's telling me, no, Amanda, I've already grabbed the horse by the reins and I'm going to be reeling the horse in even more as we go. So it's not a foreshadowing. This has already happened. It's been transpiring for a while, but specifically majorly in 2024. And the Lord is saying we're going to continue to, over the course of 2024 and 2025 and 2026, we're going to see more of this reeling things back to how they're supposed to be, to where they should be, right? Because things weren't perfect in the 70s, 80s, 90s, no. But back in those times, it was pre-smartphone, pre-internet, pre-computer, digital era, all whatever you want to say. And in those years, men treated women better. Women acted better. Kids acted better. People cared. The government actually cared about the citizens. People weren't practicing LGBTQ, as the majority, or like it was just no big deal. Drug use wasn't running rampant. It was there, but not to the degree it is now. Same with crime, right? Things were more manageable. You could trust your neighbor more, trust your child out playing, In today's world and society, there's so much sin now because we've gotten so far away. The Lord has allowed us to get so far off track that it's become apparent. Now there's people that if you talked to them 5 years ago, they would have been rah, 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 LGBTQ. Now today, the Lord is saying those very same people are like, no, we have to stop this. This isn't right. I don't want these celebratory days and celebration month and things like this. People are starting to change get back to normal, right? Another thing, OnlyFans and like women being scantily clad and like selling their body and getting attention and manipulating their body, playing with Botox and fillers and all this stuff. These things weren't, these were frowned upon back when, right? Like, I remember growing up in the 90s, it was the talk of the gossip ads, gossip pages or ads or whatever, celebrity ads, if a certain celebrity overdid it with plastic surgery. Now today, the Lord is saying there's women just lining up, going and getting this stuff done. You know, we've accepted this, right? And this is not how the Lord intended it. The Lord did not intend for us to just have this free-for-all. This free-for-all with our sexuality, this free-for-all with our bodies, this free-for-all with our children, this free-for-all with our neighbors. You know, like people today, the Lord is saying just, and this has been going on for some time, but he's turning it around, but people have just felt like it's taken upon themselves to do what they want, when they want, how they want, where they want, to who they want. And the Lord is saying, no. He did allow that to occur, and did we not notice as a society our youth start to fail? Did we not start to notice the lineups for mental health, for psychologists, counselors, antidepressants, mental medications? Did we not notice the desire and need and prescription for that go, you know, tenfold? Did we not notice the crime go tenfold? Did we not notice, like, so we're seeing the fallout from this acceptance of these things. And that was the whole point. The Lord is saying, well, let's get started here. For one, I've made words on this in the past. The Lord is saying, you took out religion and Christianity from schools. And I remember that even happening like a long time ago, like 15, 20 years ago, they started to do that because people were offended. But now look at what's happening with the youth, right? The Lord's saying you also have started to decriminalize laws to where you're making it okay to do drugs. Like, I remember growing up, if you got caught with just like a little bit of any substance, you were off to jail for, you know, possibly 10, 15 years, depending. Now today, they're trying to push laws that allow people to do these hard drugs in the park where my children play, where your children play. What? I remember if you committed one murder, you would be off to jail for life. Now today, the government is trying to decriminalize it to where, well, I guess if you do it, it's not fair, it's cruel and unusual punishment for us to take your rights and freedoms away. So we'll only put you in there for 10, 15 years and you can get out early on good behavior. What? So the Lord is saying we're accepting things, we're swallowing things that we shouldn't be doing. We're literally pushing out the good and embracing the bad, right? And then we sit back and wonder why everyone's wondering, why is my kid having a hard time? Why is the bullying so bad? Why can't I not lock my doors on my house or my vehicle anymore? Why, you know, is all the crime going through the roof? Why are we seeing these school shootings? And why I can't even walk down the street in June without celebrating Pride? Everywhere I go, it's become normality, right? Because of these things. We've taken Christianity and religion out of the picture and tried to embrace other false gods and false religions. We've tried to put it down like as if it's a bad thing when it's not. It was something that was keeping us pure and wholesome and on the right track. We've embraced technology and internet when it was something that was actually very bad for us, no different than how we thought it was okay once upon a time to drink and drive and to smoke cigarettes. But now we see the difference because years and years of data and research has proven to us, right? Well, the Lord is saying we're starting to see after these 20, 30 years of these shifts where we've implemented these changes, where just like the smoking and the drinking, we're seeing how it's affecting us. Our foods, the quality of our food is so bad. It's been bad for a long time, but it was better in the 90s than it is today. 90% of foods at the grocery store are 90% chemical based, whereas back when I was young, it wasn't quite that bad, right? It was only in certain foods. And so the Lord is saying, like, so for instance, in the 90s, you would get a box of cereal or a bag of chips, and it would be 30% chemicals for $3. Now today, you buy the same thing, a box of cereal and a bag of chips, and now it's 90% chemicals for $10. So the Lord is saying now we're so like messed up that we're paying high, large prices for really bad food, right? Worse than before. So back when the food was better quality and cheaper, now today the food is worse quality and even more expensive. To make it make sense. I put out a word about this. The Lord's reminded me a while back ago, saying that his people are going to start to be the advocates for this type of stuff. And that's the thing, is the Lord is saying that he's the one that's changing mindsets and hearts, but he's using us to do the grunt work, okay? What do I mean? Well, okay, so 20 years ago, women took it upon themselves to start dressing very scantily. If you would have dressed like that in the 70s or 80s, you would have been looked at as a loose one, as a easy girl, whatever you want to say. But then, because in the 2000s, more women were doing it, and more, it's a trend started to start where it became a trend of like who can look the most, classless, basically, the most half naked. And the Lord said, then we got into like OnlyFans and pornography and all this different stuff. And now, like, I remember growing up, you would have been embarrassed to be a stripper, right? Period. Like an escort or a stripper, that would be embarrassing. And now today, women are aspiring to do that. That's considered a profession, no different than a librarian, a teacher, or a dental hygienist. What? And so it's starting to become, the Lord is changing gears to where it's going to start to become more of the norm for women to be modest, like how they were back in the 80s or 90s. No, our clothes aren't going to be like the 80s or 90s, but the modesty will be there. The naturalness will be there, right? I remember, like, I see women today and their face is just completely full of makeup. They do have this contouring and all these different things to themselves that make themselves not even look like how they once were, like who they really truly are. Back in the 90s, we wore makeup too, but not to look like a different person. You know what I'm saying? And so the Lord is saying he's taking people back, men, women, youth, elders. He's taking us back to original reset. He's okay with women wearing makeup as long as they're enhancing their own natural beauty and not doing all these, extra treatments and fake treatments to try and look like something that they're not and look like a totally different person. Because let's be real, when that woman goes and showers or washes her face off or has goes into the pool, she doesn't look the same after. You know what I mean? Why is it taking 4 hours just to go out for the day? Like the Lord doesn't understand this. If the Lord wanted you to have double D breasts, he would have given them to you. You're 5'2", 100 pounds with double D breasts. Like, it doesn't even make sense. The Lord is saying, going off your anatomy, he purposely gave you C-size cups, as on purpose, right? It's just like, what? And it's not just with women, with men too, how men aren't so much being, men haven't strayed so far from physical appearance as women have. But with the men, like, yes, men have always forever, they've cheated, they've done all this stuff always. But the men today, and I know the ladies can agree, the men today, well, the Lord is saying the majority of them either are gay or pretend to be gay or think they're gay or they're confused or whatever. Like, what is up with that? When I was young, 90%, well, maybe not 98, 75% of men knew they were straight. Now today, the Lord says it's like 25%. Okay, and so how are women and men supposed to have these healthy relationships when the woman part is looking like someone she's not, trying to be someone she's not, trying to follow these trends and be like all these other women and trying to follow, this other way of being, which isn't even herself and truly natural. Meanwhile, her so-called husband or boyfriend or partner or father of her children or something is going and trying to get with her sister, going and trying to get with her friends on dating sites and pornography sites behind her back, and then when they get together to be intimate, he's not interested because, well, for one, she's not even a natural, like, woman, so to speak, and two, he's just spent all of his sexual energy going and looking at other women and investing in them in that way that he shouldn't be. I remember growing up, there was, pornography, but it only came out at nighttime, really late at night, and it was few and far between, and you would have to specifically pay for the Playboy channel. And even then, it wasn't to the degree it is now. Now children can even access it. We had like dirty magazines, yes, but they were in plastic cover and like they were kept by the cashier, so you couldn't just go and leaf through them. Now today, magazines aren't really a thing anymore, because why? Because people can just go on the internet and access it, right? You don't have to pay. You don't even have to prove you're 18. There's like no stipulations in place. Even a 10-year-old can access this stuff. And it's way more raunchy than it was back when, right? So the Lord is saying, we're starting to see how that's affecting. When it started to come out 20 years ago, it was considered kind of taboo, right? But now today, men and women are splitting up, and men are cheating left and right. And yes, I know women cheat too, but this is how the Lord is putting it to me. So again, don't shoot the messenger. This is how the Lord is highlighting this to me, okay? These are the Lord's words. The Lord is saying that the men are cheating, and so women are splitting up. And whether men do it consciously or unconsciously, the Lord is saying one of the things too is that men are attracted by what a woman looks like, with the false eyelashes, the false boobs, the false lips, things like that. Yes, however, the Lord hasn't made an actual woman naturally like that, right? Maybe one woman will have big lips naturally, but she won't have the big breasts. And if she naturally comes by big lips and big breasts, she won't have the fake long, mile-long eyelashes. You know what I'm saying? And if she does come by that, then she's not going to have the BBL butt lift, you know? You know what I'm saying? Like, so it used to be where some women would have certain, like sexy or attractive features about them, yes, but it wasn't to the degree that it is now, right? That woman maybe got a boob job and that was it, or that woman maybe got a little bit of plastic surgery and that was it. Now today it's head to toe, top to bottom, fake, and literally you have like women using different wigs and different hair colors and like doing all this different stuff to themselves that's completely altering them, right? And God is saying, hey, that's not how I made you. Embrace your natural beauty for what it is. And back in the 90s, 80s, 90s, women did that. They embraced their natural beauty. Yes, it's normal for a woman to wish that they had a bigger butt or bigger boobs or bigger lips. Of course it is. But they weren't necessarily running out to get it. And if you did run out to get it, it cost you a lot of money and it wasn't really affordable, and or you were the talk of the town, right? Now today, women are perfectly fine with having their kids go without just so they can save up for these surgeries and stuff, because they think that if they do that, then they can keep their man. They think that why their man is running out on them or stepping out on them is because they're not attractive enough. But the Lord is saying, no, it doesn't matter to that man of yours if you're a 2 or a 12. It's not about that. Yes, he would honestly prefer, like the Lord is saying, when these women are doing these things to make themselves look, quote unquote, better, that in reality, the man is shopping around because he is looking for somebody that looks more natural in their own way. And if not just natural, someone that looks like themselves. The Lord is telling us as women, it's okay, ladies, to use your natural eyelashes. It's okay to, accept your body the way it is and to embrace your breast size the way that it is. And to just buy a push-up bra if it's a problem, or to go to the gym and work on the butt. You know what I mean? If it's that you're too skinny, go ahead and add more protein in your diet. Like the Lord is okay with us enhancing ourselves and doing a couple of natural treatments to ourselves. You want glowing skin? You take vitamins, take multivitamins, drink more water. You know what I'm saying? The Lord is saying that it's okay to wear makeup and look attractive and pretty and things like that as a female, yes. But you do not need to go and completely alter yourself and look like somebody else just to keep up with appearances, keep up with women, and keep your man in your house, in your bed, right? You don't need to do that. And that if you're with somebody that makes you feel to do that, that's a red flag that you need to not be with that person, right? Because the Lord is saying men are having a heyday right now and women are starting to see it. We saw it 10 years ago, but we thought that's just how it was. And so when all these women were jumping on this train to go be strippers and go dress sexy and to do OnlyFans and stuff, more and more women felt like they needed to do it to stay cute, to stay relevant, and to keep their man's attention. But the Lord is saying he's slowly starting to get us back to basics and women back to basics, to where we're starting to see that actually what's really trendy is modesty. Being natural makeup, enhancing your natural features, Maybe going to the gym and not working out to get a big booty and look sexy, but to like be healthy and fit, so that you can live and be with your family for 10 years longer, things like that, where it's coming from more of a self-love natural place, right? And so the Lord is saying he's steering us in that direction, right? And it starts with women doing it. So when all the women are, not all, but when a large majority of the women are running towards the devil's path and running towards falsities and fakeness and appearances and focusing just on their physical appearance and their looks, a larger chunk of women are going to follow that, right? Because as we know, there's trendsetters and there's trend followers. So if the trend is doing that, then people are going to do that. The Lord is saying if women start to make a trend, hey, everybody's going and dyeing their face purple and their hair orange and their body pink, this is what we're doing. The Lord is saying that there's women that would go and do that just simply because other women are doing this. So we as humans are very influential to each other. If we're going and saying, hey ladies, it's the thing to do, it's the best thing to do to go and be sexy, to go and be attractive, and to go and be fake, and to be spilling out of your outfit and things like that, these are the things that's going to get you a man and or keep your man, right? The Lord is saying, no, it's not. Like, it's not. Your man is still going to go wandering and looking around, especially if he's falling into this category today that thinks that they're gay. So if your man thinks that he's gay or he's confused, wouldn't you think then, with that being said, that it doesn't really matter if you're wearing a dress or sweatpants, if your hair is long or short, if your skin is dark or light, if your makeup is 10 out of 10 or 2 out of 10, it wouldn't really matter, would it, if your man thinks that he might be gay or bisexual? Because he's choosing to jump on the LGBTQ movement. So you're choosing to jump on the bandwagon of going and being on the false side of things, but then meanwhile, and it's all to keep your man, but yet, and to compete with other women, but yet this man of yours and the majority of men that you're competing with women for, they think that they're LGBTQ or that they might be. So, you know what I'm saying? That's what the Lord is saying. And so then we come back full circle, and then meanwhile, there's these divorces happening, and then the woman's upset because she's like, I do everything, I try to be a good woman, I try to look cute, I try to do this and do that, and you're still cheating, you're still running away, you're still not staying with me, you're still treating me bad, you're still lying to me, all this stuff. Yes, that's right, because he's not respecting you for who you really are. Whereas if women get back to the basics where they're modest and they don't focus on that stuff so much, they focus where they should, on things like hobbies and career and being a good wife and a good mom and things like that in their relationship with Father God, and they bring it back to normal, how we used to have it in the 90s. Like I said, in the 80s and 90s, I'm only using that as a reference because, like I said, the Lord knows that I spent the first half of my life growing up in the 80s and 90s, so I know to use that as a reference of what he's trying to say. Like I said, back then, couples got together more organically. Back then, men were more respectful to women and women were more respectable, right? And back then, women and women could be friends instead of feeling the need to compete. And back then, there was less divorces and better moms, like better parenting, and therefore better children, better offspring, right? Better quality of life at home, things like that. If the home life isn't right, why would the man want to be there? You know what I'm saying? And so this is the thing. So that's on the women's side. Then with the men's side, the men, same thing like I was saying, they're so sex driven now. They've always been. Men are very physical and sex driven. Yes, they've always been. But because we've provided pornography to them at their free disposal for the last 20 years, it's nothing for a man to do this stuff. Like the Lord is saying, back in the day, it would have been more work, right? It would have been harder to cheat. It would have been harder to keep the mistress quiet. And women had respect for themselves. So if the wife found out that the man was cheating on her, she would have left him, right? And she would have had grounds to, because he cheated. That was grounds for divorce. And if the mistress found out that the husband wasn't going to leave his wife for her and that he didn't actually love her in the way she thought he did, that she would have had enough self-respect to leave him in the dust. Well, you're not leaving your wife, see ya. I don't have time for this. You know what I'm saying? But God is saying that's how it was. But now today, the dynamic is that if the woman finds out her man is cheating, she just ends up going ballistic and or goes and cheats on him too. And then it's a competition as to who can cheat better, faster, stronger, more so. Or she goes and plays with her looks and her body and things like this to try to enhance herself to try to stop him from doing that. But because he's hell bent on doing that, it doesn't matter what the woman does, he's going to just do that irregardless, right? And then meanwhile, the mistress gets into this competition with the wife. Instead of realizing, hey, that's his wife, that's the mother of his children, she sees it as that she must be on the same grounds, or she's got to keep this man. Why would you want to keep a man that's trying to cheat on his wife with you? Like, this is the thing, is the Lord is saying, red flag, like he's trying to tell us this. And this is something that society understood post Y2K, post internet, post smartphone, back in the 80s and 90s, right? 60s and 70s. Go back a decade before Y2K, it doesn't matter. Men understood how to be more respectful and things like that. Women understood how to be more respectful, right? But because society has changed so much in the last 25 years, now the women have changed. And because of that, the men aren't doing what they're supposed to do. And then because the men have changed, because of that, the women aren't doing what they're supposed to do. And therefore, society has changed. Now the children that man and that woman are raising up and growing up, they're not right either. They're not doing the right things either, right? As we know, if you're an 80s, 90s kid like me, there was a next to zero tolerance policy when it came to anything like being disrespectful, causing crimes, doing this stuff. You better not be, you know what I'm saying? And now today, the generation today, they're all vaping, they get to just run and do whatever, they're out all night, there's no boundaries. And the Lord is saying that one of the reasons why the kids are out running rampant and doing all this crazy stuff and don't have boundaries is because the at home, the dynamic is so skewed that the child doesn't even want to be entertaining it. And the Lord can understand why, because the husband is cheating on the child's mom, and the child knows it or can tell or pick up, or there's fighting or domestic disharmony between the parents, and the child senses that because of the husband's cheating, and or the mom of the child is so focused on herself, and instead of spending some time with the husband and the kids and at home and whatever, she's too busy at filler appointments and things like that, and working out at the gym for 14 hours, and doing her hair and makeup for 4 hours, things like this, right? And going shopping, and so that takes up an entire day. And when these things repeat themselves over and over and over again, and meanwhile that child is lost on their smartphone or their tablet or their laptop, they're lost in the sauce with technology, it's not going to take long before there's a very toxic, unhealthy dynamic here where the mom's off, the dad's off, and so is the child, right? So this is the thing, is that the Lord's telling me is that, and then when that child is being inundated with LGBTQ this, then that child grows up thinking that, hey, I can just use my body, push my body around, do all these things, because that's what I see my mom doing. She's dressing scantily, she's 40, trying to look 20. Then meanwhile, I see my dad. I've caught him a few times on his phone looking at pornographic photos. I've seen him talking to other women that aren't my mom. Then meanwhile, I go to school, and a huge chunk of the people at my school think they're LGBTQ, or they want to be LGBTQ. So it doesn't take much for this child to be really messed up at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, right? And these are developmental years when there needs to be the most focus put on structure and boundaries and things like that for the child's betterment, right? For their better overall development. So the Lord is saying that He is slowly but surely going to improve our diet, the food quality that is provided to us. It's already started happening. He is going to restructure homes and families and marriages and relationships and covenants again. He's going to take out the third-party influences, whether this is the smartphone, friends, associates, family members that are toxic, mistresses and misters, pornographic materials, whatever it may be, anything that's a distraction or an outside influence from man, woman, and family and children, right? He's going to start to just fix that, like those holes that are in those dynamics, like whether it be the children or it's the dad or it's the mom. He's going to patch up the holes that are in the covenant, okay, the family unit. He's also saying that he's going to start to turn things around with the youth so that they're seeing things from a normal point of view again. And yes, we're still going to have the internet and technology and all the stuff available to us, but we've went too far off the map. We went too far gone. And the Lord said, okay, that's enough now. You guys are all starting to see how far off you went, just like it took 30 years to realize the data from drunk driving. It took 30 years to realize the data from smoking and the consequences that this causes in the health of people. It's taken 30 years for you all to see the power of the internet and how it's affected your intimate relationships, your relationships with your children, with your family members, with your lovers, your partners, and with society and things like that. We're starting to see that, we can't trust our neighbors in our society today like we could 30 years ago. The Lord is going to fix that. We're starting to see that we can't trust our spouse, our boyfriend, our girlfriend, our husband, and our wife like we could 30 years ago. The Lord is going to be fixing that. We're starting to see that, we can't trust our children to be out and about in society the way society is these days like we could 30 years ago. The Lord is going to be working and fixing that. So if you can picture the advancements we've made, and there is some good progress we've made in certain ways, like surveillance, for example, having cameras on things, that's good. That's positive in a roundabout way. Yeah, the Lord is saying he's going to, fix the boundaries around that, though, because there's, people trying to spy on people and things like that, like what? But the fact that the Lord is saying one of the reasons why why we're seeing less children being abducted than could be is because there's surveillance everywhere. It's so much harder to get away with that today thanks to technology and surveillance than it was 30 years ago when there wasn't that, right? And the fact that we all have smartphones, you can easily take a picture of somebody's license plate, of their vehicle, of them or whatever. Everywhere we go, we can't go to the store and come back without being on somebody's surveillance, right? And so the Lord is saying that when it's done in a healthy, proper way, that's actually good. It's when people take it a step further and they're weird and they go and try to install hidden cameras on people and things like that. Like there's something wrong with somebody that does that. You know what I'm saying? And so the Lord is saying that's another thing too, is mental illness. The mental illness is through the roof. Narcissism, it's a mental illness. It's through the roof. Depression, suicidal, anxiety, all this stuff is through the roof, right? And so the Lord is saying he's also going to work on that as well. So we're going to see a reframing of everything that's off. What is off today? Marriage, covenant marriage. Okay, the Lord is going to be working on that as well. Family dynamics, children, the dynamics between children to their parents, parents to their children. Yes, the Lord's going to be working on that as well. Crime and addiction through the roof and just rampant, the Lord's going to be working on that as well. The government and how corrupt they are, the Lord is going to be working on that as well. Our food system and the quality of food that's provided to us and the quantity of food, the Lord's going to be working on that as well. Mental illness, how women view themselves and view their partner and view each other, and how men view themselves, view their partner and view each other. The Lord's going to be working on that as well. And so there's more too, but I'm just saying those are like the top 10 things that the Lord is saying, like, we have went so far off the map on every single thing. Marriages, we're way off base. Parenting and raising the next generation, we're way off base. Temptations and addictions and crime, we're way off base. The quality of food and the quantity of food that the government tries to provide to us is way off base, right? And we're already starting to see this happen. We're already starting to see and I've personally witnessed it. I've seen where there's now a pushback against LGBTQ. People are starting to push back against it. Unfortunately, it's went on for so long that the minority has now become a majority. But it's going to take time. It took time to turn from a minority to a majority, so it's going to take time to turn from a majority back to a minority, but it's going to happen. Now, we're still going to accept certain things. We're still going to accept these people and things like that, but we're going to start to reset things back to how they should be. Instead of women starting out in the 90s as modest and a small percentage of the women being immodest, and then we started to see it shift gears to 20 years later, where now a large majority of the women are immodest, and then only a small percentage are modest. So we saw the tables turn there. The Lord is taking it right back, where a larger amount of the women are going to go back to being modest, and a smaller amount are going to be immodest, right? And that's how it should be. There's always going to be addicts. There's always going to be mental illness. There's always going to be divorce, and there's always going to be loose women and men that have wandering eyes and that stray. These are things that were going on 100 years ago, right? So we're not going to subtract that 100%, unfortunately. However, these things were the minority. Divorce used to be the minority, but now it's the majority, right? The cheating spouses, the cheating men and the cheating women used to be the minority, but now it's the majority. The people that committed grievous crimes used to be the minority, now it's the majority. The amount of people that had mental illness and drug addictions used to be a minority, but now it's the majority. The amount of people that once were LGBTQ or identified as so was in a minority, but now it's the majority, right? And so the Lord is saying that's how we've gotten so far off, where people are unhappy and stressed out and turning to things that they maybe wouldn't have turned to in the past, substances and stuff like that, is because they can't take society. And the Lord understands why they can't take society. The Lord's like, I used to have this society in better shape, but because you've taken me out of schools, and that's another thing too, the Lord is saying you're going to start to see him resurface back in schools again. And again, these things are going to take time. Some of these things we might see shift in the next 6 months. Some of these things are going to shift over the next 6 years, right? It took time for us to go from bad to worse over these last 20, 30 years, and it's going to take time for us to go from bad to better again, right? It takes time to turn things around. However, the Lord has started working on it. He's been working on it. He's going to continue to work on it. And I'm just so grateful. Thank you, Lord. We're going to slowly start to see our society come back to normal. And it takes a bunch of factors. The Lord is saying what it takes is us. Women need to set a new trend of hey, it's trendy to stay home and be a good woman and a good mom and a good wife and to be modest and to be natural, okay? It's going to start the trend of, so that men are it's good to be focused on your wife and only your wife or your partner, right? And to be a good father to your children. And to not be distracted by so many other things like money and lust and men and women and, drugs and all this other stuff. And so the Lord's removing all the distractions, all the third-party entanglements that are not needed and not necessary, and that honestly and truly come from the devil, right? And it's the only way that we can do it in order to get back to basics, get back to reset. The Lord's showing me your cell phone. So say you get a cell phone and it's a brand new phone, okay? And that's as brand new as it gets. But then from there, over time, you add apps. You look up websites, you do certain things, and that phone starts to get bogged down, and it was okay the first 6 months. It made it through the first year, but by the end of the second and third year, it's slowing down. It's too full of all the data and all the information overload and all the days, day after day, week after week, month after month of continual just influx, right? And so it starts to slow down and bog down to where you just say, oh, I guess I'll get a new one. But what you can really do is go to factory reset and reset your phone. Yes, you're going to lose all of that old data, but you can back up the good stuff, the stuff that you need, you can back it up. And every other thing that is old or worn out or not necessary or not needed any longer or whatever, it can all just be deleted. And that phone isn't garbage. It can go right back to good again. All it needed was a factory reset, right? And it's so funny that the Lord is using that as the analogy when the very thing that's causing us to be in this situation is a smartphone. But he's using that because it's relevant in what I'm talking about here in this message, is that with a smartphone, since we all love smartphones so much, the Lord is saying that our smartphone, it can get overloaded over the course and duration of years of daily usage, right? Just like us, we're overloaded by the daily usage of our brains, of the different things, because your smartphone is like a brain, and you have an actual brain, and it's taking in all of this information, all these cookies, like your smartphone is, but it's not, the data and everything, it's not good. Like 90% of it is just garbage and can easily just be deleted or not needed, right? But just like the smartphone, with usage every day, and not offloading, it'll start to bog it down to where it starts to operate not as good as it once did. And that's the same with our family dynamics, our careers, our relationships with our family members and friends, our relationships with our partners, as in our marriages, or our personal relationships in general, right? Our relationships with ourselves. We start to become, the phone cannot perform to the same standards that it once performed at. Not because the phone is garbage or there's not anything wrong with it, but because it's bogged down with so much data that's been put through it and on it. And all you have to do is, yes, you could go get a new phone, but then you'll be in the same position again, because after using your new phone for the next 2-3 years, the same thing will happen. And you'll just be in this cycle. Or you can just keep the phone that you originally had and just factory reset it all, and it'll go back to how it was. No, it won't perform like brand new, but pretty close. And then you can go ahead and re-download new data, new things, but this time you're going to be more careful about what you download on the phone and what you do and whatnot, because you don't want it to get bogged down and overloaded like it did the last time, right? So that's the thing, is the Lord is saying, yes, he could go ahead and have the mindset we have and just throw all of us out when we're too overloaded and too bogged down. But luckily for us, the Lord knows that we can be reset just like our phones can. And so we understand the concept of resetting our phone. Well, we need to understand that our brain can be reset too. And that, you don't have to go throw out your husband or your wife. You can still keep them. You just need to reset yourself, and they need to reset themselves back to factory settings, so that then they can go back to how they were 20-30 years ago once upon a time, and how you were. And, then things can be successful, because it's not them. It's what everything has done to their thinking and their psyche, and vice versa with the other partner. It's impossible to live in this day and age we live in and not be touched by any of the damage that society is infiltrating us with on a daily basis. And we're all responsible for it. We all have contributed to this in our own way, for each other and for ourselves, right? But when we continue to be distracted, we don't realize, and then it's so easy to blame this, that, and the third. Like, oh, well, I cheat because my wife doesn't give me attention. Then the wife's like, well, I focus on my looks because my husband isn't giving me attention, so I think if I focus on my looks, he's going to pay me attention. Then the children are like, I just focus on being bad and running away and escaping and vaping and playing on my phone because my parents are so infiltrated and inundated with my dad with, what he's doing, and my mom with what she's doing, that they, are so absorbed with the stress and the stressful dynamics that society has created day to day that they can't function properly with me. And then that child themselves, because they're on the smartphone and they're distracted with the kids around them talking about drugs, and the kids around them talking about crime, and the kids around them talking about LGBTQ this and LGBTQ that. The kids start to get all inundated and infiltrated as well, just like the parents. And then they wonder why, the children are being removed from the home because there has to be intervention, and why the husband's leaving the wife, and why the wife wife as cheating and why the husband's cheating, and like there's divorce, and then the kids being raised by the grandparents, like, and then the mom gets on addiction and the dad does, then in 5 years the kid's addicted. You know what I'm saying? It's too much. And the Lord is saying, he allowed it to get this way, just like the Lord allowed drinking and driving deaths for us to see that it wasn't smart. Smoking deaths for us to see that it wasn't smart. And today there are still people that drink and drive, and there are still people that smoke, but it's not to the majority that it was 20, 30 years ago, right? Why is that? Because we've learned from the past of what not to do in the future. When you know better, you do better. Well, now the Lord has allowed us, when the internet came out 20, 30 years ago, we thought it was the best thing in the world. And don't get me wrong, it does have its benefits, like I said. But now that 20, 30 years of such things has gone by, now we're starting to see from our own data and research of what we're seeing in our society, how our kids are behaving, how our partners are behaving, how our family members are behaving, how we ourselves are behaving. We're starting to see how this is having an effect on us more than we thought it did. And so the Lord wrangled in the drinking and driving and the smoking statistics, and the Lord is also wrangling in some of the other statistics. And so we're going to see this over the course of this next 6 months of 2024, and also over the next few years to come, of the Lord slowly but surely bringing things back to reset, back to factory reset, right? And think about when you do a factory reset on your phone, it doesn't happen in 2 seconds. It takes a little bit of time for your phone to actually reset from all that data, right? Some phones it may take, 5 minutes. Some phones it may take 20 minutes, right? It just depends on the phone, the model, and how long it takes. The Lord is saying same thing goes with each of us. It's going to take time for each of us individually to reset back to our factory settings, to reset our brain back to how it originally was intended to function. But that, over time, we start with 1, then 10, then 100, then 1,000, then 10,000, and eventually it's going to grow. And if the majority of men, or at least a big chunk of them, say, hey, let's stop cheating, let's start respecting women, let's stop lying to them, let's stop, trying to abuse them, that more of the men will follow suit. But because the men today all think it's well and good to abuse women mentally, emotionally, physically, sexually, and to not pull their weight with their children or their family, and to put all the brunt of the weight on women, and to go and just cheat and sleep around, that's what we have, right? And the vice versa with women. Once we get a large majority of women to say, hey, you know what, I don't need to waste all this time, money, energy, and effort on looking like someone I'm not, on trying to be someone I'm not, and all because I'm trying to compete with my friend, and compete with my sister, and compete with my cousin, and compete with the girl at the gym that works on the treadmill beside me every Tuesday. You know what I'm saying? Like, who cares? And as long as the women start to see things properly and go back to focusing like they're supposed to on themselves, yes, but also their children and the youth that are surrounding us. I mean, do we not remember there used to be block parents? Have we forgotten that? There used to be block parents, and a block parent was like a safe home that they'd have a sign that children could know that if there was something wrong, with them or their home or something, that they could run to that block parent. That block parent was a safe person. Not only were women themselves focused on their husbands and their families and their homes, but they were focused on other people's children as well, in the form of being a block parent, right? And so now today, like, it's just crazy. And so we're seeing this more and more and more. And because we're seeing it and there's no end in sight, it's causing people to act out and lash out. The stress is causing people to go commit crimes when they wouldn't have done that 20 years ago. It's causing them to turn to addictions when they wouldn't have done that 20 years ago. It's causing them to run to divorce when they wouldn't have done that 20 years ago, right? It's causing people to take it, They were on level 1, and then they got pushed on to level 5, and now they can't take it, and it's pushing them to level 10. The Lord is saying he never intended that for us. We were supposed to be on like a level 1 all along. And of course there's going to be problems. No life is perfect. The world is not perfect. It never has been. But at the same time, it was us as individuals, which made up a collective society, that slowly allowed things to get off the rails. And the Lord is saying that by the same math, it's going to take us individually as a collective society to bring things back onto the rails. And so it took time for us to veer off track, and it's going to take time for us to veer back on track. And so if you're wondering what can fix your husband or your wife or your relationships with your family members or the relationships with your children or things like this or society as a whole, just divert back to the 70s, 80s, 90s, to pre-internet. And you'll start to see what it was. Was there crime back then? Yes. Was there skewed marriages and children? Yes. But was it to the degree it is now? No, it wasn't. And why was that? What were some of the things that are going on today in society that are considered accepted that were not accepted back then? Well, LGBTQ is widely accepted today. They have their own month. It wasn't widely accepted back then. Maybe that plays a part. Now today we accept drug addictions and drug addicts and drug use. Well, 20, 30 years ago, that was not widely accepted. If someone was shooting up in the park by your house, you'd call the police on them. Now today, they have rights, so you have to not bring your kid to the park anymore. And we all know as parents, if you do go to bring your child to the park and no one's there on a bench or whatever, there's needles on the grass. Right? I've personally seen it many times. Or vape pens and things like that. And so these are things that you might have seen once in a blue moon back in the day, but now today it's all the time. You can't take your kids to the park without it being like that. And back in the day you could have took your kid to the park and left them there playing in the backyard. You can't do that now today. And yes, back in the day that was a fear as well, but not to the point it is now, because there was at least block parents, on the blocks that we don't have now. So if we can take things like the old school method of block parents and the modern day version of the surveillance, and we can pair these two things together, then we can have an even better society. Because we had the care and the watchful eyes on the block parents in the 80s and 90s, but they lacked the surveillance because that technology wasn't out at the time. Now today we have that technology to our disposal, but we lack the care and consideration, watchful eyes on the block parents. So if we can bring that back, the block parents and the watchful eyes from the 90s, couple it with the surveillance of 2024 and put these things together, it's a beautiful marriage, right? Now the children can feel safe no matter what. They're being surveilled wherever they go, and also there's block parents on every corner so that they can know where to go that's safe. You know what I'm saying? Now today, I know that if a neighbor's outside mowing their lawn and my kids or some other kids are doing some sort of mischief, they're not even going to pay any attention to that. Or they're just going to run in and lock their doors because they're nervous and lock their car up and carry on. Whereas 20, 30 years ago, that would have been being reported because somebody was caring enough, of the children themselves in the neighborhood and the society to want to call that in to get it checked out, right? Or now today, someone will call in, but it's not for that. It's to try to, judge the other person, to try to get them in trouble or make them look bad or something like that. Like, that's not the right mindset to have, the right perspective. You know what I'm saying? Just like if we can take how men and women back in the 80s and 90s were back then with, basics of like being faithful and loyal and honest and trustworthy and things like that, and we can marry that with 2024 today, where we've learned from our experiences and what we've been through. We've already seen the bad, so now we know how we want the good, and we can take the modern day version of the internet today. Well, these people can plan a wedding today and plan it 10 times easier and faster than they could have 30 years ago, thanks to the beauty of the internet, because now they can, in 10 minutes, Google all their venues, Google wedding decor, you know what I mean? And so now in 2024, that couple can get married easier thanks to the internet because they can book things online, things like that. They didn't have that at their fingertips 30 years ago. It would have been harder and more painstaking to plan a wedding. Now today they have that at their disposal that we didn't have back then. But if they can take the fundamentals from back 30 years ago of faithfulness and trustworthiness and loyalty and marry that with today's ease of planning a wedding, now you have an even better wedding than could have happened in 1993. You know what I'm saying? Just as some examples. So that's the thing is, our society can really bloom and blossom from the fundamentals of 30 years ago and where we're at today, as long as we can marry these things properly and appropriately, right? So anyways, I hope this finds who it needs to find. Honestly, this is a message for everybody to hear, right? And so we're going to start to see this more and more. Praise the Lord for this. This is what society needs. If you're a parent specifically, or a partner, like if you're a husband or a wife, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? It's very difficult as a man to rear a family in this day and age, and for a woman to rear a healthy family in this day and age, and for children to grow up properly in this day and age. We see it. And even if you're not directly married or have a child of your own, I'm sure you have nieces or nephews or your best friends in a marriage. And maybe they're coming to you and saying, my wife, she's, just spending all this money and she's doing all this stuff. And I think she's trying to cheat on me. Or my husband, he's constantly watching pornography. So therefore he doesn't make time for me. You know what I'm saying? And so how can men have friends if they're all thinking that they might be LGBTQ and they're curious and they're not sure if they're straight or not? And how can women have friends if they can't trust each other because there's no boundaries? Any woman will go after any woman's husband these days, and or they're competing against each other as to who's the cutest and the sexiest. It's not even possible. And how is the byproduct, the child, going to grow up healthy and properly when that's the mindset that they're witnessing from their father, and the mindset and actions they're witnessing from their mother? It's not going to happen, right? So anyways, I hope this finds who it needs to find. I hope it makes sense. I just want to say I'm not trying to offend anybody. I'm not judging anybody. I'm not trying to put anybody down or try to be hateful or this, that, and the third. All this stuff, that's a religious spirit. If you feel that, by the way, just so you know, I'm literally saying what the Lord told me to say. And this is not the first time I've said it. I've put out words like this in the past. But the Lord is saying that those past words were words of that this is coming, and this word is a word of this is already happening, and it's going to continue to occur. So we're going to see more changes implementing over the course of time. So, and we're well overdue. We're well overdue. So I hope it finds you well. Take care, and God bless.